Hey everybody, so Marcus here again with one of my talks similar to those that I've had with Dr. Gregory Sadler and Dr. Brendan O'Byrne back in the day. So this time around, I'm actually meeting with my nephew Adrian, who I've had the ability to witness grow up from, I guess, birth and snapshotted pictures from my visits to Canada since I obviously haven't lived there really in a long time. But the point of this conversation I'm going to have with Adrian here is really to continue on the topic that I started in my first video since my return, more in and around sharing the experiences of Gen Z and the youth of today with, I guess, the older generation, people more of my generation, somebody in their 40s, which is really what the majority of my audience is like. So we're going to go through a series of topics of Adrian's experiences, both in school and generally growing up in Canada. As a Gen Zer, and how that's really changed since I guess our days, because his experiences are definitely nothing like ours, considering the access of social media and all that. So Adrian, maybe I don't know where do you really want to begin telling this story? Because I guess high school would be a good kind of starting point of how that environment's looking like these days.
Yeah, we can start with high school. Maybe for some tiny bit more context, I haven't been I've graduated now from high school. I'm 22 now. Um, so yeah, okay, we can start from high school. In terms of just like the general school experience, or more so in any particular way.
Well, I'm thinking, because one of the phenomenon that's really been appearing on the internet quite often these days is the loneliness epidemic that's plaguing kind of Gen Z, where people are self-isolating due to social media. So people are sitting on their phones in their own rooms. So how is it actually from the ground experience lived out? How do you see that manifesting in terms of, I guess, school? Do people still have friends? Like in my time, there were cliques. So you have that American stereotype where you had like the nerds, you had the jocks, you had like the weird kids, people listened to metal, and people generally found themselves in some sort of social circle in high school, uh, delineated by, I guess, some form of social status. So is that something that you experienced? Is there still like a cliquishness based on a group identity that formed based on some social bond?
Very much so, they still exist. I would say a lot has to do with, for example, what sports you play, or like if you're in the band at the school, or if you're in the dance program. Like my high school had a big dance program, and lots of the dance girls would pretty much, like, as far as I know, mostly just associate with other dance girls or whatever. So around like that, like my friend group, most of my friends, I would say, that I had later on in high school were because I would play soccer with them. So also has to do with kind of classes, what kind of classes you're in, because obviously you make friends there, but the classes are kind of separated in terms of your academic abilities. So in the Canadian high school system in Ontario, where I was, there's three tiers of students, and then you can get put in the lowest tier, which would be locally developed. Um, so if your grades were quite poor, you would be in those types of classes with other students of that academic ability. Then you'd move up a step to applied. You'd be in the applied program, and then you'd a step up from that is academic. So I was in the academic classes all the time, and certain classes don't have that distinction, like gym classes, or there's other classes that were mixed, like auto shop classes, other like kind of electives. So you meet other people as well in those types of spaces. But most of my friends, I would say, were guys I knew from playing soccer with them, mostly kind of almost outside of school, I would say. But I knew them from school as well. And then we'd hang out at school together. Um, or friends that you meet in class. I don't think I was necessarily as close to those guys because I just spent more time with like the soccer guys, right? But this definitely kind of exists in every single kind of friend group. Like I remember lots of people would just refer to the hockey guys as the hockey guys. Like, you know who you're talking about when you say the hockey guys? Everyone knows, the whole school knows, right? You can say
Right.
Yeah. And so it's like you have a group identity kind of. Maybe the hockey guys are kind of like the best example of that because like they were like the most like kind of defined group. You didn't really see them necessarily chilling with other guys.
Right, but it sounds like people did have a clique at least that they belonged to, meaning that socializing still existed in the material world, right? Because the general narrative here is that Gen Z specifically are self-isolating, but from what it sounds like to me, people are still grouping up. Are they interacting in the real world?
Yeah. Like when I was in high school, I graduated in 2019. So I've been out of it for a little bit. Maybe post COVID, some things have potentially changed. But when I was there, like obviously phones and stuff have a big presence in the classroom. Like when you are assigned to do like work by yourself or something, the phone comes out and your earbuds go in for a lot of people, and then you're quite literally just self-isolating and ignoring everyone else and doing your work or whatever. But cliques definitely still exist. Lots of socialization still exists. Like I said, maybe I misrepresented the hockey guys, for example, because they would interact with other people as well. But if you saw them on lunch or something, it was usually just those guys, right? And you'd know. But the socialization definitely still existed. Like for sure, I made a lot of new friends there. Like I spoke with people every day, all the time. But definitely, I don't have the experience of like high school in the '90s, like you would have.
Right, but what I'm hearing from you is not really a radically different experience from mine. I mean, we there was cliques, of course, much like you're describing as well, but there was no real isolation in the sense of nobody felt like they didn't have friends, right?
I mean, I obviously can't speak for everyone at the school. I'm sure that.
Yeah.
I would say if I had to pinpoint like a way that phones or kind of the existence of social media had a mark on school, it would be that stuff would like spread really fast. If there was like fucking like there's like high school drama shit, like
The gossip
people
rumor.
find out really fast right away, and everyone knows everything pretty much.
What was the how did it spread? What was the tool used for that?
Usually, the most prolific app for that would have been Snapchat.
Right, so
Just
you guys gossiped about other people in the school.
not just that, but like if there was a fight or something, the video was always on someone's Snapchat or
Right.
whatever, right? Or there would have been like I remember there was a couple of meme accounts on Instagram of the school, right? And it was like some guys I knew that ran it, and yeah, they would just post memes about people at the school and like just like troll stuff, right? Like
Right, so they were running public facing social media accounts that they were then publicizing the crap going on in your school.
yeah, they were making memes about certain stuff that happened, about certain people's reputation. Like, yeah, there was like, to give an example of this, there was like this one girl in our grade. I guess she had a reputation for liking black men.
Okay.
So there was a meme of her like, the floor is lava almost, and the floor was labeled as white guys. And she was like jumping up on the walls and stuff, like avoiding them.
Right.
It was like stuff like that. It was like anything funny that like kind of people knew about was like memed. Like
Right. But I mean that's who ran these meme accounts? Was it women or other guys?
no, well, the one that I'm thinking about was run by like a couple guys.
Okay. And did they have an intent with that particular account? Because
I don't know. I wasn't super close with them. I think they were just trolls. Like they're.
were they trying to build a social media presence for themselves based on this?
I don't think this really had anything to do with presence per se. They just probably thought it would be funny to do something like this.
People knew about the existence of this account, right?
They would, yeah. People, I wasn't like huge or anything. It wasn't very large. Like they followed like a bunch of people at the school, and then that's how you know of its existence because they would follow you,
Right,
and then
right.
you'd check it out, and then you'd see the memes that they post and stuff.
Right. No, because this sounds like one of those sorts of I don't know, like public shaming people for clout, right?
Yeah, it pretty much. That's like kind of what it was, but like I don't think the intent was like to gain like fucking a presence per se. It was just kind of troll just to troll just because you can troll.
Right. Did people actually treat this account seriously in your school? As in, like, Did people behave themselves consequent to fearing?
No,
No,
no, no.
because it didn't really
I
happen.
remember like my good friend Malad. He was memed. He has a not so much anymore, but did before kind of a problem with stuttering occasionally.
Uh-huh.
So they memed him of like they made a YouTube like thumbnail kind of edit, and like the title of the video was like 100-hour stuttering compilation, like
Right.
like something like that. But like it was like I guess well he knew it was a joke. He didn't take anything serious. Like he would comment under things like "fuck off, guys," like whatever. But
Right. Yeah. It's
it was like so he would comment, but depends. I guess other people takes that stuff kind of differently, right? Like if you're a kid that was more maybe self or like insecure than my friend would have been, then maybe they would have taken that in a more negative light. Or yeah,
Right. No, it's interesting because obviously that stuff didn't go on when I was in high school because it didn't exist. But
I should say like the page wasn't like very large or anything. It was mostly like the my grade at the time, and mostly about like kind of more like of the well-known people at the school, like people that you would
okay, well, no,
yeah.
we can move on because this doesn't sound like it really had any big significance.
No, it was just something funny, like kind of a side note. But yeah, like because I was talking about Snapchat and Instagram and how that played a role. Yeah, like
What about Instagram, right? Because Instagram is very much considered like right now like the largest dating social network out there, and pretty much every girl is on Instagram, specifically of your demographic. Did Instagram play any role in terms of your high school in terms of dating, or were things still mostly contained to the real world? As in, did guys approach girls in your school, or was it mostly done through?
no, you would slide in DMs or something.
It's always in the DM.
No, okay, maybe not always. I don't know every circumstance of everyone, right? But like, yeah, I would say mostly is done through the internet, like stuff like that. Like,
Even for people, obviously for people that they knew in real life. Right?
yeah, it was.
So
I guess it's just easier to do it like that. Like, yeah.
So some girl in your class, instead of talking to her, you would find her on Instagram and then slide into her DMs.
This is not uncommon at all. It was quite very common, probably more common than like. Well, you like in class, if you guys had like, if you were talking, then already that's a good stat. But if you didn't know her, like if you knew her but you didn't speak to her,
Yeah.
like that's like the way you would have done it. Even if you do speak to her, like you can. I guess it's like for some guys it's easier to make moves online than in person. Maybe you would flirt with her in person, but like also like through Instagram and stuff like that, take it further.
That's really weird.
Like I remember, like I'll give you an example.
Sure.
That's like Instagram introduced stories, like how Snapchat in the Snapchat format where you post something and it stays up for 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people would post like stuff. They would do like a poll, like you could do a poll on your story that was like, it started like we should, and then the options were like start talking or talk more, and like it was usually done so that like members of the opposite gender would respond to it, and you could kind of like see like because you could see who's responding to your stuff.
Oh wow.
Right.
Okay. You know.
Yeah.
What this really reminds me of is back in the 90s, and this was only when you were like, I don't know, in the 4th grade. You would write this note saying something like, "Do you like me?" with a yes checkbox and a no checkbox. And this is some shit that girls would do to pass on to guys. This sounds exactly like
No,
that.
yeah. That's what was done. A lot of people would. It's very, very common that would happen.
Did it work?
Yeah, I think so. Like,
And what would happen though if a guy did actually approach a girl in person? Was that like weird?
maybe. Like, I don't think if you didn't know her, it was just. I'll say like it's something that didn't really happen.
Right.
Like,
So you're in a class with a girl in a semester. You haven't spoken with her. The class lasts for 4 months. The 2 months in, you want to ask her out, right? It would be weird if that guy who she has seen in that class for 2 months now to approach her and start a conversation.
like maybe not super weird. It's just like it not some like maybe looked in kind of a weird way ish. Like it just is like the established route is you go follow her on Instagram. If she doesn't follow you back, that's a bad sign, buddy. Just abort mission, right?
God.
Right. Then if you get a follow back, you can like her picture. If she likes your picture back, okay, we're on the right track here, right?
Oh my God. Okay.
It's like a game, right? If she's liking your pictures back and you liked her picture, then you can go ahead. That's the road is clear for the DMs. That's where you go.
Oh God. Okay. This is the first time I'm hearing of this particular route, but yeah, that's
No, that was like a quite established route. Yeah.
yeah, not at all how it used to be done. But okay, that's interesting. And your friends, I guess, applied this methodology.
Yeah.
And in terms of relationships, are people in your high school? Were a lot of people paired off?
There was definitely oh yeah, I would say most weren't. Most were not.
Mm-hmm.
But there were still a lot of couples. Yeah.
So couples are still normal then, like you would.
Yeah,
say.
yeah. It was not anything out of the norm. It was just that most people were not in a relationship.
Right, and those couples, in terms of their longevity, would you assume that those relationships lasted? Were there relationships you knew of that were in the years?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, right.
Well, obviously many didn't, but like the ones I'm thinking of from that I can remember off the top of my head, yeah, like they're really like even until now, there's like some.
Right.
Yeah, which is years later.
Okay, no, I know, it's fine. I mean, it's very similar, like I say, to how I remember things. Is what I'm hearing from you is actually kind of different from what the stereotype is of what goes on. At least your school seems.
Well, like lots of people also don't want to pair off. They just like want to have fun. They're just in it for sex. Yeah. That was very like prevalent as well. Like if you weren't in a relationship, chances are you're either looking for one or you're just trying to have sex with someone.
Right, and we're one of the concepts that we talk about in the general MGTOW space, because Adrian is familiar with the MGTOW space. He's familiar with my channel, so this sort of stuff is, I guess, nothing out of the ordinary, past beyond, I guess, my exposure of Adrian to the content, but also that he came in fairly red-pilled into the discussion to begin with. So context of dating, when you're talking about like these short-term relationship things, sleeping around and things like that, which I guess is generally common. It was common even in my day. I wouldn't say that it was necessarily as known because there was only a select few people that had that reputation for engaging in that sort of behavior, whereas the majority was either, I don't know, like before they had a first relationship, or aspiring towards it, or living out that sort of American movie style of humiliating failures where they try something and then it backfires horrendously on them. So it was a little bit like that back in my day. But when you're talking about this this aspect of promiscuity, how prevalent was that?
Quite prevalent, I would say, even especially among guys. Like it was like almost like brag, like you brag, like guys brag about like this stuff.
Right, and how much do you believe of it was true?
Not as much as was said.
Yeah, I can believe that. In terms of the actual, because again, one of the concepts is that generally chicks go for like the top 20% of men, right? So was it the case that you did see that the guys that were mostly bragging were definitely of a higher, I guess, aesthetic quality to the guys that weren't really bragging about this stuff? Like, again, the stereotype is like for 80s, 90s movies, which wasn't particularly false even in my days. It was, but it was more of a social thing than a looks thing. Is like the cool kids, the jocks. The sports have always been that hierarchy where the jocks were kind of more on top because of athletics, and it's a very simple sort of exhibit you can put on playing as part of a sports team because that gave you some status. So it was mostly people from that sphere that were sleeping around that had the reputation in my high school. Was there something like that, or was there a cross section? Like, did you see ugly guys that were bragging about sleeping around, or like average looking dudes?
This, I wouldn't say it was like super brazen that you would hear people do that very often. But if I have to think about it, yeah, would say from what I would have heard, um, yeah, it was more prevalent among guys that you would expect could actually fucking like do what they're saying they did.
Right. So they
Yeah.
look the
There
part.
was like competitions between guys. Like I remember hockey guys told me that they had a competition between themselves of who could reach 10 girls the fastest.
Right, but I mean
Yeah.
that's like an inner competition.
Yeah, yeah.
When the top 20% compete with each other, that doesn't really say much of anything, right? So I guess yeah, the whole alpha fucks aspect of it was still the case. Eh?
Yeah. Yeah, kind of. I wouldn't say it played like a large role necessarily in.
Well, I'll ask a different question then, because you said relationships were quite common, and that there were cliques in your high school,
Mhm.
right? So was there like a nerdy clique,
There was
like the chess team or the math club? I don't know,
I'm
something
trying.
losery.
There was, if I had
stereotypical.
to say, like the stereotypical losers was the kids that would eat lunch in the stairwells. Um,
Okay.
and yeah, that was just kind of like, I guess that's where the weird kids would hang out. Like some of my other friends that are, I'm not necessarily the closest to them, or as I was in high school. But like I heard stories where they would on lunch, they would like go to the top of the stairs, and in the middle of the stairs there's like that open part that goes
Hmm.
all the way to the bottom.
Yeah.
So they would stand on like the second or third floor and pour water down the middle of the stairs,
Okay.
and it would like to like land on the weird kids at the bottom, right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
But the weird kids were like grouped together, like a little
Yeah,
herd
yeah.
of
The
them, right?
weird kids had their group. Yeah,
Yeah, and it was a mixture of boys and girls, right?
yeah.
Right. And were there couples in that weird kid group?
I would assume so. Yeah, I would. I didn't really speak to them ever, if at all, but I would assume so.
Okay, okay. You don't know, but yeah, it would make
Yeah.
sense, right? Okay. Okay. Well, that makes sense. I guess these specific hierarchies forming up, so I guess they had a chance too. And
Yeah, like if you were one of them, I guess your only option was another one of them.
yeah,
You
yeah,
weren't really breaking barriers.
yeah. No, I understand. Yeah. No, that's that doesn't seem like any of this has really changed since the '90s. From what I remember, it sounds very, very similar. Which I saying like this conversation's a little bit. How would you put it? It's a little bit of a demonstration that the stereotype doesn't really hold universally of what you hear, because the general internet culture idea of the high school experience, and we're talking about what 2019 when you left high school, right? So we're looking at 5 years back. You know, the last 5 years may have gotten worse, but even 2019 is fairly recent, right? This whole loneliness aspect of it. I mean, did you find that? Well, I know you personally didn't really suffer from this because your social circle was fairly extensive, even because of the geography of your friends. But did you find that other people would have been mentioning that there's like problems making friends, or that they're alone, or anything like that?
Mm, not that I can remember off the top. Like there was kids that you would know necessarily probably didn't have that many friends, but like for example, like I say there were cliques, but there was also a lot of like interchange. Like maybe I properly didn't properly describe this earlier. Like there were definitely cliques, right? If you were choosing to hang out with someone outside of school, it would be like your clique from school,
Mm-hmm.
and you would mostly hang with school with your clique, right? But
Mm-hmm.
like at lunch, for example, like it was not uncommon at all for like kids that you didn't associate with them in their clique being like with them at that time. Like there was like lots of people that kind of like you would know everyone and you would kind of be cool with most people, but like you had your closer friends. So it wasn't really that you'd necessarily cast anyone aside unless, like I said, like there were like weird kids that you didn't really want to associate with.
Right.
But if some of the kids that you would see probably didn't have that many friends. They weren't weird per se. They were just like maybe like I don't know. They weren't in your classes or they didn't have the same interests as you, but like you would still speak to them. It was not like an uncommon occurrence that you would have lunch and they would be like at your table, for example.
Right. Okay. Bullying. Was there much bullying in your school? Oh, first of all, before that, how many people actually went to your school?
About 2,000.
2,000 people. So it's not a small school experience or anything like that.
No.
Right?
There's about 500 people per grade. Grade 9, 10, 11, 12. Each
Right.
about 500.
Right. So what about bullying? Was there bullying there?
First, yeah, I would say there was, but I don't know if I would describe as like the stereotype. Like I said, I guess you can use the water example as bullying, right?
Well, name what you would call a bullying activity, because like what we used to do is the whole shoving a guy into a locker business. That was kind of real. Like it didn't happen often, but I mean, I know I did it to a kid or here and there, right? When you get in the 12th grade, you get on a power trip or something, you shove a kid in a locker because he's looking at your girlfriend wrong or something like that, right? So that did happen from time to time. But and I definitely was heavily bullied, say in the 9th grade, right, by other people just preying on somebody they perceived weak, right? So the sort of bullying that would have taken place then was a general open mockery, shaming during, say, lunch, like a number of times in the 9th grade, I remember a number of times that I both witnessed and sometimes experienced, or somebody would just walk by and just slap you in the back of the head and keep walking, right? That sort of open form of aggression where others would see it, and then if you didn't react, then, well, you were a bitch, basically, right? And fights would break out, sometimes consequent to that. I mean, I got into a few fights because of this sort of activity. So that's I guess what would have been called bullying, right? Where there actually was like a physical violence dimension to it, that somebody put hands on somebody else. Verbal related stuff, that was I don't even know if we were calling that sort of stuff bullying back in the 90s. It was just shit talking that people did against other kids. And even the subject of bullying itself wasn't really a thing. Like it wasn't that there was language that the student body was using to discuss bullying at all. It's more like don't be an asshole more than stop bullying somebody, if you know what I mean. It was isolated to a person behaving negatively rather than to that person exhibiting something that has a label like bullying, right?
I would say that, yeah, it did exist, but not maybe as so brazen in terms of physical stuff. Like there were fights, obviously, but I don't know if I would say it was like because of bullying. It was just because like two guys had a beef with each other, like
Right.
and there would be a fight. A lot of like the verbal stuff would be over the internet as well.
Like in a public setting? Or was it just
Honestly, probably not. I didn't really know. It's not something that I would notice day to day. Really, there was like kind of specific targets, and it was usually like a person that really put themselves out there. So you almost had to try to like be someone that other people wanted to see fail or tear down.
right?
Like you were just like so obnoxious that other people were just so annoyed by you that they would go online and post memes about you, but like kind of more serious. Like everyone knows that you're kind of like a meme. Like you're just like if you do something.
Right, so like somebody trying to be cool by posting a flex online.
Yeah, exactly. That is like people would bully you for that. It was like, oh, like that's cringe as hell. Like why would you do that? Like
Got
stuff
it.
like that. Like
Got it.
yeah.
So like it was brought upon oneself in a
Kind of, yeah. Or if like you were a really high grade achiever and then you would not just the grades, but if you were always running for some sort of school council president, this and this, like maybe it's not just because of that, but also because of her personality. The girl that I'm thinking of, she got a fair bit of. She wasn't very like, we'll say this stereotypical attractive girl either. So she had there was probably a fair bit of bullying directed towards her and her boyfriend. I would
Because she
say
was running for class president?
not just because I think it's like compounding of things. It was that she was a really high grade achiever.
Mm-hmm.
People found her kind of annoying, I guess her personality. She was not very attractive in the physical sense.
Mm-hmm.
Just like this combination, and her and her boyfriend were both kind of like this way, sort of. There was kind of like a maybe some bullying directed towards them, you
Well,
could
so they
say.
behaved as something like an arrogant manner that annoyed people. Was that part of it?
For her, probably was part of it. Yeah, just a combination of all these things. Plus, yeah, I would say that people maybe felt that she deserved these positions because, oh, like I'm such a high achiever and stuff. I didn't really know her that well, so I can't
Right.
comment on like exact. But like I remember like myself knowing like this person is like kind of a person that it's acceptable to make fun of,
Okay.
which is a little messed up, but
Well,
it's
it's
kind of
happened. Yeah.
yeah.
Was there a concept like ninering in your school?
No, not really. No, like it was known as like like
But the concept still exists. It just wasn't practiced.
I haven't heard that word in so long. It just brought me back to like
Yeah.
when I was in grade 9 going into grade 9 and I was
Yeah.
like, is this going to happen to me? No, never anything like that
Yeah.
I even heard of necessarily or saw or definitely didn't happen to me. It was just kind of like everyone knew of it, but it was like this doesn't really happen in
Right.
reality. It was
Right.
just like a kind of abstract, like yeah, it happened before, but like it doesn't really happen.
Right. So let me explain quickly for the audience because I don't know how universal that word ninering is actually. So in Canada, the concept of ninering was almost like a hazing ritual that one would come to expect once one entered the ninth grade, where the word basically comes from the expected bullying that one would encounter by being hazed because you're in the ninth grade, a niner basically. So yeah, that was still a fear that I remember carrying into high school. I did experience bullying in the ninth grade, but it never came from the older grades. So I don't think it actually applied even in my time as a phenomenon that somebody from like the 10th, 12th grade would do anything against me in a hazing ritual. But definitely there were other bullies in the ninth grade that were causing problems, as it were. So yeah, so I guess it's the same for your experience now.
Yeah, nine ring wasn't really a thing. Yeah, there were maybe it wasn't super visible to me because I wasn't part of like the experience, like the it wasn't necessarily so public the bullying, so there might have been more than I'm leading on, but it wasn't something that I would see necessarily super publicly.
Right,
Like
right,
there would
right.
be guys that were just like kind of arrogant assholes that would like you would see from time to time like they would like call someone that maybe didn't have the most friends in the class like call them a loser or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
But it wasn't anything that would like a cool guy would not a stereotypical like cool guy this
yeah.
guy wouldn't go out of his way to like fight some random kid that he thought was a loser.
Yeah, yeah. No, I get you. I remember like being in the 12th grade. You go fast forwarding 4 years. Not grade 9 kids were just kind of invisible to me. I mean, they just were part of the ambient furniture of the school, but you paid no attention to them because they're so far detached from whatever it is you were doing in your life. I mean, at that point in time, you tended to have a driver's license, a car. You had like activities that you would do outside the school itself. So I mean, they're just non-issues. They weren't really agents in that establishment there. What was I going to say? There's I'm losing my trail of thought here. In terms of bullying, we've covered that topic. Were there any scandals, specific scandals that you would remember happening over the years in your high school?
Hmm.
Like what would be considered a scandal? Right, I'll give some
Yeah.
examples of things that have transpired that I've heard about the old schools because Adrian and I went to not the same high school, but high schools that are fairly close to each other, almost like competing schools, because we kind of grew up in those areas at our respective periods of life, the same geography. I know that one of the things that did change was that there are far more stabbings. I hear more about that, which never took place when I was in high school. That's something that you heard about?
You're talking about that stabbings are more common now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, no, actually, maybe not. When I was in high school, I don't remember really hearing about that. Actually, we're talking about violence, like this violence. There were a few guys in my high school that, for example, there was these guys that would sell drugs, right? And they would also sell weapons, so
Really?
guns and stuff. In a high school, it was known to most of the people that were kind of like, it was known and people knew, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that they did actually would shoot someone, right?
Mm-hmm.
This would have been when I was in like the 11th grade or something. I obviously wasn't there. I don't really. What I heard was that this was like a drug deal or something, and then someone threatened them or tried to steal from them, and then they shot them. But it wasn't like a. I don't.
It was just a drug deal gone bad.
Yeah, that's the gist of what I got from that.
And that took place in your high school?
It wasn't in the high school. It was guys that went to my high school, but it didn't happen like on the school grounds or anything.
Right. So what about safety in your high school? Because I mean, when I refer to the stabbings, I'm not talking about like what people that went to that school did outside the context of the school.
School safety, I would say I never felt unsafe.
Okay.
There wasn't like, we had we're supposed to have a cop that was like designated to be our school cop, but didn't really see them too often.
Okay.
There was fights and stuff, but it wasn't anything that I got to that level that I know of. But like, I will give you examples from, because my sisters both went to high school after me.
Yeah.
And in the last year, and I still talk to one of the teachers that taught me, and he described the situation with violence getting much, much worse in the years after I had graduated. So in the last school year, there were apparently 2 stabbings. Either he described it to me as on the school grounds, I think was at least one of them, and then one of them was on the lunch hours right across the street. But it was students from the school that were at school. They were just like on lunch, like at the pizza shop right across the street from the school.
Okay.
And yeah, I generally said violence has become a much larger issue at the school than it was prior.
So over the last 5 years. Then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Behavioral issues as well. He said kids are much harder to manage, and grades, for example, have even dropped. He told me that he had to start boosting grades artificially by 10% just to meet what it was before the pandemic.
Right. So the behavioral stuff is kind of stereotypical because of, I guess, the 2-year downtime that people lost in terms of socializing. So that kind of makes sense. I mean, because Adrian has younger sisters as well that go to that high school. So how would they describe their experience, if you can think about it? Would it be somewhat commensurate of what you lived through, or would they say that things got worse?
They would probably say that it's worse. Yeah. They can't, obviously, like, I can't put myself there now, and they can't compare as to what it was before. But yeah, like, I remember speaking to my youngest sister about it, and she would say, yeah, like, this stuff is messed up, and yeah, it happened. And yeah, that's about it. And it was like, kind of like, oh, yeah, it happened.
Okay, so maybe it's over the last 5 years that things have really escalated in terms of the downturn.
Yeah, I never heard about stabbing beforehand. Most was that people got into fist fights. Yeah.
Right, so like, it seems to me then that really it wasn't as much of the technology that was turning up this downward spiral, because in 2019, I mean, Instagram, Facebook, all this stuff, all the social media stuff was well entrenched as part of the culture of the youth. It's really COVID that seems to be the the variable here that it was different from your experience of high school than it would have been for the years that followed, like in your sister's age bracket, right?
Yeah, it's very likely. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe after high school, then university. How did that experience look like? Much in the same kind of framework of questions, the male-female dynamic. Was it the typical stereotypical? Did you make observations of the stereotypical college experience about girls just sleeping around in an uncontrolled manner, partying, getting drunk? Were they getting with older guys, or were they dating within their own age bracket? I mean, how would you kind of summarize this sort of phenomenon, or maybe not summarize, tell specific stories about it?
There definitely were girls that, like, you could tell, like, just by speaking to them, like, what, and like I only went to university in Canada in person actually for a year and a half because of COVID, and yeah, so my experience is a bit more limited than, for example, my friends. But I can say from conversations I've had with my friends that had gone to school longer than I had, that did it in person longer than I had. Or this one guy, I remember, he said he was really tired of like girls that just wanted to sleep around. He said he was like ready and like looking for something with actual something serious. He said, like, yeah, like it was so easy to do any sort of sexual activity you wanted with it. And he was like part of a house that was in a student neighborhood, and his house was known for like throwing parties in that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. So it's like a fraternity house?
No, fraternities weren't really a thing at my school. I would say in Canada in general. Maybe.
But
Yeah.
I understand, but the vibe of this place.
Yeah, you could say it was that kind of vibe. People knew it kind of as like, I guess in the neighborhood would know, like, yeah, these people throw parties like fairly often. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he was in a space where it was very easily accessible. He was telling me, yeah, like it's nothing, like, and he was saying that he's done with it though, and he wants something real after like a few years of, I guess,
sleeping around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of like a general sentiment around that I could sense, was that, yeah, like a lot of people when they enter and for the first couple of years are kind of like that, and then later on they become looking more for something serious.
Okay, so the question becomes, when they enter, they kind of become like that. Is it the case that they bring that expectation with them, as in they aspire to be like that, and college is just a justification, or is there some pressure exerted on them to behave this way? Because what you just said is that, well, a 4-year college degree or university degree, right? Saying the first 2 years they're kind of promiscuous, and then they want to settle down, right? So it can't be the older years that are pressuring them into this.
No. Obviously not everyone is like that and goes through that transformation or even starts out like that. But like, I think if I had to describe it, like, I would have said that it was just because like it's your first time that you're away and have freedom to do pretty much anything you want. Mm-hmm. There's kind of that also in popular culture now. It is glorified doing this kind of stuff, right? Yeah. And music, and there's like Instagram accounts. Like there's an Instagram account, for example, called Canadian Party Life, where they just showcase like people going crazy at parties in college and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's like this kind of like obviously party is not like sleep around, but it's kind of goes together in the same sort of environment. Mm-hmm. And it is kind of, yeah, I would say it's encouraged by popular culture in a way.
Right, but do people actually take it seriously? Do they attempt to mimic it, as in, does it bestow upon them? Do you witness people actually actively aspiring to be degenerate based on what they see in media because they actually think that makes them cool?
Yeah.
You do see that?
Yeah.
Okay. How prevalent would you say that is amongst the student body? Like people that are so brainwashed that they try to copy, pop culture.
Yeah. No, it's quite prevalent. I would say it's quite prevalent. Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of the girls themselves, how prevalent do you think the corruption is, over the population of the females in the school? Is it like 50%, 100%? Obviously, you couldn't actually know for sure, but definitely, if you took a census of the acquaintances that you had, how many of them were like that?
I would say it wouldn't be like out of the ballpark to say 50-50.
Okay.
But yeah, like I said, I was there for a fairly short time in comparison to what you would normally associate with a college
Right.
university experience.
Right.
And my contact with people like this is not as, I'm not like super confident saying this, but I wouldn't say that it's an exaggeration or like a bad estimate to say 50-50.
No, I think like the general manosphere would probably say that's lowballing it, right? They probably say it's close to 80, 90%.
Right. I don't think it would be that high. There's lots of like, definitely lots of like people that would not want to associate with that. Yeah, I guess maybe I would say people that come from larger cities would probably be more inclined to live like that in a way, I guess. But this is just my speculation. I don't
Right,
really know.
but I mean that statement coming from larger cities. I mean, you don't come from a village,
No,
right?
I
I mean,
don't.
the population of Brampton is 800,000 people, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big city by any standard. It's not London, which is 12 million, but 800,000 is a lot. So how much bigger does it get than really Brampton? I mean, you have Toronto, really, right?
Yeah.
I mean that. So of the girls that in the 50-50 breakdown, what would you say was like an attitudinal difference between the girls that weren't doing that versus the ones that were? As in, I would say, how did the ones that abstained from that hookup culture, what was their opinion in and around it? Because they were obviously witnessing it around it. What kind of compelled them not to participate? Because the culture, like you're saying, encourages it. A lot of people bought into it. Like a significant amount of people bought into it. The ones that didn't, why?
Religion, I would put on that list.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like family values, you could say. Like they would view that as not proper, like it's as degenerate, and they don't want to have part in this degenerate stuff. They would say that probably like I'm at school here to learn
Mm-hmm.
primarily. And yeah, I have my friends, but we don't go around like the goal is not to sleep around and like get wasted every weekend. The goal is to probably learn. And I would say that's probably a large percentage of what would cause people to abstain from it.
Right, and something that just came to mind is there any rebellious element in this where some of the people would have had their reason for abstaining from the degeneracy because it's like cooler not to be degenerate? Is there any shift at all to it seeming cool to be more conservative than it does to be this more liberal, stereotypical, free love sort of creature?
I don't know. I don't think that this is something that people consider or really think about, honestly, if I had to say. Like I don't really see it as being cool. It's just like people respect your decisions, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like known, kind of. Like, yeah, like I don't want to do it. Okay, cool. And no one really gives it a second thought, if I had to say. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And the guys that you were saying that lived that lifestyle for 2 years, the frat house-like house that you're talking about, that did want to settle down in third year university, I guess we could say, time-wise. What exactly did they describe at all what the kind of conversation looked like with these girls? Like, because clearly they were encountering the same sort of, hookup culture type girl over and over again, right? Did they try to, I don't know, girlfriend up these sorts of girls?
There's kind of like, I guess the attitude would be like, you can't make a wife out of a hoe, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's a pretty prevalent attitude among guys that I would know. No, you wouldn't really want to necessarily do like it's not uncommon, but if you had to like make a conscious decision, like you probably would stay away from it. Like I remember there's an attitude of kind of like you have to find a good girl. Like these girls are just for this.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you want something serious, you go have to go find a girl that none of your friends know about, number one, because if they've heard something about her, it's likely something bad, right? So there's kind of a need to like if you have a girl, your friends shouldn't really know her, or if they do, it's known that she's not engaging in this kind of behavior, right?
Okay, so where would they look for these girls? In the same school, but like completely contextually outside of.
Yeah, like if like I'm not saying that every girl that goes to like a party or whatever, for example, is like this. There's lots. That's why I said 50-50. Like maybe half the girls there are like not against participating in that, but probably like half of them would say no, like it's not for me. Like I have a long time boyfriend or whatever. I'm here with my friends or whatever.
But do you believe them? Like, or was that?
Yeah, I believe them.
You believe them.
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah, so you wouldn't say it's like a good girl front that they're just putting on.
No, I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these guys that were looking to settle down, or it's weird to say that about a university student, but let's just say settle down from hookup culture,
Yeah.
maybe have like a girlfriend or something.
Mm-hmm.
Where would they actually look? Like, what was the Gen Z wisdom around where you find a good girl?
If it's outside of that party setting, that's a good start. Like if you had a girl in your class and you had a group project together or something, or if you guys played sports together and like intramurals or something, or it was a friend of a friend,
Mm-hmm.
right? That you can also kind of ask them like what their judgments are of this person. So it's kind of like a filtering mechanism in that sort of sense. Yeah, if it's outside of the like getting wasted on the weekend and like hooking up with random people space, that's a good start.
Okay. And was the methodology similar to how it was in high school, where you add her on Instagram and then you slide into her DMs?
In university, people I would say were more mature about this kind of thing, and it wouldn't be considered weird to just approach.
Uh-huh.
Or if you didn't know them, a little bit less frequent, but if you already knew them, then it wouldn't be weird to like just say like, hey, like we should like go do something sometime, but still very frequently over social media as well. I guess if I had to describe, maybe it partly is because when you're in a high school setting, everyone knows everyone. It's a small space. So if you were to do this in real life and it didn't go the way you wanted it to, it would be much more humiliating. But in university, there's so many more people and nobody really cares that it's not anything that's like really out of the ordinary.
Right, so you could get away with it, basically.
Yeah, no one really. Everyone's kind of thinking in their own world. They don't have time to like judge you for doing the whatever. It's like, I guess if I had to say, that plays a role in this.
Okay, and in terms of pairing off, was there any? Was it mostly the girls that were looking for boyfriends in that sense, or were the guys actually actively looking to pair off with a girl, or what would have been the kind of the breakdown there?
I would say that girls would say when asked if what they wanted was probably more of them would say a boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure that I believe that 100%.
Right.
And just because they're looking for a boyfriend doesn't mean they're against, in the meantime, doing whatever, right? But if I were to say like a trend, I would probably say girls are more so, even in my experience, looking for something kind of more serious than guys in that environment.
Okay, well, like 60-40, something like that?
Maybe. This is very rough and just based on my experience, but yeah, like from my friends and what I've seen, usually the girl would be the instigator of like wanting to form a relationship. Because I'll tell you something interesting as well, is that like in high school especially, it was really big. Like you have a talking stage where you're not dating, but you're talking to this other person, which means you both are kind of interested in each other, but you don't know them very well at all. So you're talking over Snapchat or maybe in your class in real life, but you're just talking. You're not official.
Okay, got it. But I understand, but I don't understand because I never lived through that, right? The talking phase. How do you know it's begun? I mean, you describe this is you describe this little Instagram dance of first you add them. If they add you back, then you can like a picture. If they like a picture back, that like signals a permission to slide into the DMs. Is that like the marker of the beginning of the talking phase?
Could be very well. Yeah, that could be a good start. Maybe not like right away, the first message or something, but like if you start to like speak more frequently and it's like you have communication going back and forth like pretty much every day, then that's a talking stage.
Okay, how long does it last?
However long you want it to last. Usually I would say probably like it's not uncommon for it to be from anywhere like a week to like a few months even.
Really?
Yeah.
And what exactly happens during the talking stage? I mean, do you just talk? Do you like go on dates? Is there touching? I mean, but I don't know what the boundaries are of the actual conduct in this.
It's usually done over social media, right? Mm-hmm. And then if you decide that this person would be a potential good match for you, then you would arrange a date, right? But a date doesn't signal that you're out of the talking stage. It means like it's a date and we'll see.
What does a talking stage graduate into? Being a couple? No.
Well, if it's going well, then one or both of one of the parties would just like say like ask like, would like you want to be my girlfriend, boyfriend, and then that's how it would.
Okay, so dating used to serve that function back in our days, right? There wasn't a talking stage. Mm-hmm. You talked when you dated. Mm-hmm. So you would meet with people and you would interact with them in the physical world, right? Didn't necessarily mean dinner, but you go to the theater, the movies, hang out somewhere, right? So that was dating, right? You weren't necessarily a couple yet in an official terminology, but you could be having sex during that time, right? There was no talking stage as a separate, I guess, unit of.
No, you could be having sex and still be in the talking stage. It's almost like a larger milestone to become a girlfriend, boyfriend than to just have sex with them. But you could be in the talking stage after already having sex with this person.
Okay, but you're saying the most common manifestation of the talking stage is actually just actual talking and on social media.
Yeah.
Not in person.
Yeah. Probably, yeah. Like, you could obviously speak to this person in real life, but like most of the stuff would be over social media, I would say.
Okay, so let me ask you, what would happen if a guy tried to, I don't know, like, not play by the rules of the talking stage, but try to do it like the way we used to do it, like ask a girl out on a date? Would that be too aggressive?
Yeah, for some girls, no. But it's kind of like an accepted thing that first you talk for a little bit and you don't ask right away.
Okay. And and you're saying that could be from a week to several months.
Well, like I said, like the talking stage before you guys, like you can go on a date and still be in a talking stage, right? Okay. Like I said, right? But then the end of it is that you make it your relationship official, that you guys are a couple.
So does the word dating mean anything?
The word dating means when you're official that you're a couple. Okay. And that then you would say I'm dating this person. Before that, you would say I'm talking to this person.
Okay. So I guess we used to say we're dating them, and then we'd say we're a couple. Mm-hmm. Right. So the talking stage, I guess, is the new rhetoric for describing dating, but it doesn't look like the way dating looked like 20 years ago. Okay, very interesting. Would you say that this talking stage stuff is uh, the norm, expected, and violation of it is weird?
Yeah.
Okay. And that means that a majority of the girls would find it aggressive if the first move was to ask for a date when they don't know you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I will say the reason I said when I originally started introduced the talking stage concept is that this is more so true in the high school setting than the university setting.
Okay.
It's more acceptable to just ask, like I said, ask them out like right away in university than in high school.
Okay. Okay. But you would think that having just left high school, the rules wouldn't abruptly change for somebody who's just begun university, right? They would still kind of expect a similar dynamic.
Maybe you graduate into kind of this change, but like I said, I think a lot of it has to do with the environment that you're in, like a few hundred people maybe that you like in your grade that you actually like kind of know of or whatever, versus like thousands of people go to this school. Like maybe the maturity aspect as well, that it's like not seen as weird, and people from all over different places, right? Not just your hometown. I guess that also might have an influence. Like what's normal in your hometown might not be normal in the town like 100 kilometers from you, right?
Right.
So it's just kind of a mishmash of people where, probably maybe the older methods are more in use.
Okay, I understand. And when the guys did finally want to pair off, did they complain? So you already did list that they did complain about having trouble finding a girl they would consider worthy of being a girlfriend.
Yeah, there's an attitude that there's no good girls left.
But is there an attitude at the same time in terms of thinking that they're going to be rejected? As in, because in this setup, you're just saying that they have a hard time identifying a worthy partner. Not that they're identifying a partner that would actually want to pair off with them. That's a bit of a different story, right? Did the guys, at least in your circle, did they complain about girls just outright rejecting them in mass where they didn't even have a chance?
No.
And would you kind of label the crew that you were hanging out like more of the top tier sort of men, or were they just general average guys?
The mix. The ones that I would have more experience with, that I would hang out with more often, like my closer friends, well, I would probably say that they're in the kind of more attractive to women tier. Like, they're pretty tall guys. Like, they're all in school doing quite well and stuff. Like, all the surface level things are kind of right, and for that to make sense. So no real complaints from them that I would, like I said,
Okay. And was the majority of your acquaintances that caliber of guy, or did you kind of hang out with something that would be, something more akin to a stereotypical loser, right? Fatter, uglier, maybe a bit balding, guy with glasses, short. Did you encounter guys like that in general?
You would encounter, but even them, I remember, like, would have not really a problem with girls.
It's like they'd be able to get laid like anybody else.
Yeah, like this one, like I was describing, and it's not a problem really, even if you're fatter or shorter, like even have like ADHD, for example. Obviously the girl would kind of correspond to that.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say it was like very difficult to partner up if you were actually looking, and if you weren't like shooting out of your league, let's say.
Got it. So if you shot within your limits, you were pretty much fine.
Generally, I would say yes. Yeah. Although I will say, interesting, one of my friends here in Poland I know has recently told me that he's given up looking for now because he can't find one that he would say is like, he said they're kind of all messed up. All the girls that he's spoken to are super messed up. So he's for now he's not looking for anything.
Okay, well, we're radically moving away from cultures
Yeah,
now.
we are.
If we're talking about Canada and now we're talking about Poland, right? That's not a very good leap.
No.
I will say, yeah, Polish girls are, having lived in Poland now for I think 7 years, they are an interesting creature. I would label them as predominantly a shame-based creature, meaning that interactions with them is specific. They're very, they're kind of, imagine a cat that sees something new and doesn't know if there's danger there. And if you approach them too quickly, they'll like run away from you. You get a lot of that sort of dynamic happening in Poland. They're very quiet and easy to scare, regardless of who you are. In fact, if you're quite attractive, they tend to be even more scared of you. That's what I've kind of witnessed myself here. They want you, but they want you as long as you stay over there from a distance. But that's neither here nor now. Going back to the Canada setup. So if you're saying that, the reason I'm asking specifically around the less attractive guys is because, again, you have the whole incel community on the internet, which I'm pretty sure you're familiar with. But in general, it's a group of guys that have concluded that consequent to their lack of looks, they have no chance at all. Now, obviously, there is, you can be ugly enough where nobody really wants you. I can imagine that. Even ugly chicks wouldn't want you because, well, you're ugly, like horrifically ugly. However, there's a very broad spectrum of what's considered, below average. And would you say below average guys that you may have encountered through stories, through direct interactions, that they still had, opportunities to either sleep with women or like maybe pair off? It doesn't matter what the girl looked like, right? Just that they were able to actually sleep with women or girlfriend them up.
Yeah, it might take a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's like, no one that I've heard like from this sort of setup, like my friends or anything like that, and that I've heard really necessarily complain about this specific.
Right, but we're talking about specifically because your friend group seems to
Yeah, I know what you mean as well, but these guys as well, I don't necessarily have the contact I do with like my friends, but like I saw a lot of these guys that had girls, and they would like I spoke to them as well, and they would tell me like like some of them were cheating on their girls, and they're friggin' like fat or super short and fat, and it was like like I remember hearing the story of like this one guy who was described to me as really ugly, right? That he cheated on his girl, and like so his girl was like really mad, and then they broke up, and then she lost like a whole bunch of weight and stuff, and improved herself. Yeah, this is the story that I heard.
No, I get it. I mean, in my experience, you see ugly guys, fat, ugly guys, short guys with girls all the time because their aesthetic is actually a plus to the sort of girl they end up with. Because those sort of girls that go for what I guess would be referred to as the subhuman category, what incels would refer to him, those girls need that guy to be subhuman in terms of aesthetic because he's non-threatening to them. He looks uglier than her, therefore she psychologically does not fear him leaving. Therefore, she has this sort of control, and these are basically shame-based women that go for that sort of guy. So I know there's a market for them, right? She may not want that guy as, how would you call it? She may not be over the moon necessarily that that's the sort of guy that she's going for, but that's the only guy she can emotionally actually go for. Like, that's the sort of girl that would run from like an alpha guy, because there's no version in hell she would give herself permission to be with that sort of guy. Because psychologically, it would pain her to have that as a boyfriend because she would be so terrified that he would leave her at any given moment because of his looks that she doesn't even bother. Like, she doesn't even bother. Whether or not those sorts of girls would sleep with that sort of guy, maybe, it's possible. Would they cheat on their boyfriends with that sort of, maybe it's possible. But regardless, the guys they boyfriend up are these kind of losery guys. They're ugly. And not that they're just losers in the sense of a socioeconomical status, or they're losers in the sense of being criminals, but they're legitimately ugly, right? Fat, short, any combination of the unattractive qualities, and that's like a marker that they're psychologically safe. So I get that. So your experience actually would correspond to what I've witnessed as well, right? And that's how I would account for these guys, right? That the girls that they're encountering are shopping around for exactly that sort of quote unquote subhuman, right? But that's their product. Okay. Anything specific you'd want to raise observationally? Maybe not related to my questions.
Give me 1 second here. Let me think.
Okay, maybe let's take a pause for a minute. Okay, we're back from our little break. Adrian had a few talking points he wanted to raise. So let's go through those. So what was the first one?
The proliferation of OnlyFans girls.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that because in general, I think a lot of girls have just taken to the sex business just to make some quick money. So, like, what's the attitude? Like, was that a thing in high school?
No, not at all. In high school, like a funny way you could phrase it is that girls used to like get depression and all these sorts of go into crazy like breakdowns if their nudes got leaked. Now it's like $5.99 a month on OnlyFans, and it's like no problem. It's a kind of a normal thing.
Right, but girls were sending nudes to guys.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But that would have meant like they were underage, right?
Yeah.
So if their nudes were being leaked, that would be like child.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Yeah. So who was leaking that? I mean, I'm pretty
guys that just did not give a shit.
Really?
Yeah.
They weren't afraid of the law, basically.
No.
And
they would just send it to like some random, like to their friends at school or something. Like,
so it wasn't publicly that they were displaying this.
No, it wouldn't be like that. You would like purposefully like leak it or so. Like you would, like if anything, it was more so that the person's friends would see, and then maybe if they sent it to them, then it could get sent around. But yeah.
Okay, so guys were basically sending just like naked pictures of their exes to other buddies.
Yeah, that's not like something super uncommon.
Right. Were these guys sending dick pics to these girls?
I'm sure.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure they were. Yeah,
that wasn't a thing back in my day, obviously. But and were the girls leaking those sorts of? Were they sharing them around with their friends?
Yeah, it was the same. Like I remember one of my like kind of friends, more so acquaintance, but like was one of the hockey guys, you could say. He would say, yeah, like when I was in like grade 9, dude, like just to start the conversation on that topic, I would just send them my dick like right away.
Well, so okay, let's position this dick pic sending inside the context of the talking phase business. So okay, so we've liked them on, followed them on Instagram. We've been followed back. We've liked a picture of theirs. They liked a picture back. We slid into the DMs with a dick pic.
Well, I'm not saying that's what usually happens at all. I'm just saying that like, but not in the Insta. It wouldn't be on Instagram because that's like, there's a difference between Snapchat and Instagram in this regard, where Snapchat, you can, if you send a direct picture or chat to somebody, it will notify that person if they take a screenshot or save it. Right. So that's like the benefit of Snapchat if you want to go down this route. Right. Because the other person will know if the other person saves it.
So what was the kind of the mental state of a guy that's sending a dick pic? He doesn't give a fuck. He thinks it's funny. It's like,
yeah, probably.
It's just
but there was like times, like I remember like one of my friends from elementary school that I kind of stopped hanging around in high school. Like I would speak to my female friends and they'd be like, yeah, like all of us have seen this guy's dick pic because he would send them to us.
Okay. And how's their response around it?
Just like laugh and like.
But were they laughing that he sent the dick pic or at his actual dick?
I think it was just funny that he would do that. Both. I would say it's both. A mixture of both.
Did it ever actually result in a positive outcome for the guy?
Well, for the guy I mentioned previously that said that he would start his conversations like that occasionally, yeah, I would say probably not most of the time. But if you're kind of already in this like talking stage where like you kind of have acceptance that you're not like a weirdo. Like like I said, like if
You've built some rapport.
if you've built some rapport and you do this due to I guess the proliferation of this in the culture, like in media and whatever, like it might, like, a fair amount of the time I don't think it would end bad, and I don't think it did for him.
So it's kind of like modern day sending flowers, I guess, eh?
Well, it's a little more extreme than that, and it's not something that's like recommended by any means, but it's not uncommon either.
Gotcha. And the nudes that the chicks would send, were they solicited or did they volunteer them? Because obviously,
Both. But guys would definitely like try to get them, right?
Right. They'd ask for them.
Yeah, for sure.
And was that common enough?
Yeah.
It was part of normal courtship just to ask for nudes.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. So, okay, I get it. Yeah, if your nudes are leaked, obviously you wouldn't really want that. It wasn't publicly posted because I don't think anybody was stupid enough, to really do that.
There were instances of like someone that has a grudge on you or whatever would hack your thing or like and then leak it. Like that happened. But not often at all.
Right. And so when did OnlyFans kick in?
This would be like coronavirus time, COVID time.
Okay, you were at university at the time.
Yeah. Right. No, OnlyFans, no one had heard of that in high school. Right. But girls that I did go to high school with became OnlyFans girls.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll talk a little bit about that because I'm not quite sure which year OnlyFans was actually created, but for sure it wasn't nearly as big as it is today until the pandemic, right? So definitely there were massive spikes in content creators on OnlyFans during the pandemic. So that makes sense because your timeline is high school timeline is a little bit pre-pandemic. So OnlyFans in university after the pandemic, during the pandemic, girls that you know from high school, right? Yeah, it's not
by any means like all the girls have it. It's just that every guy, I would say, knows a few girls, maybe at least one from their school or whatever that does it now. Like, especially if they manage to gain some sort of following on social media, it's like almost expected that they will, right? Like, one of my female friends from high school, went down that route. She got a social media presence doing like posting gym stuff. And then I remember just like if watching stories on Instagram, people like you could do like stories where your fans communicate to you and like ask you anything, whatever. Right. And a lot of them were like, when is OnlyFans coming? And then, it was just like, it's expected if you have a following almost like.
Right. And you did tell me one story about a girl from your high school that started an OnlyFans account, but you actually met her after the fact as well. Yeah. Right. So did you talk about?
No. It wasn't meant. No, I didn't raise that. Right before me and my friend did meet with her, and we raised it as my friend saying like, if I were you, like, don't do this. Because I know that it's kind of like it's like almost like expected, like it would be normal for her to go down that route.
Right. So you warned her before she opened this account.
Yeah. And she said, like I would never do that. And then 2 weeks later.
2 weeks. Yeah.
About like 2-3 weeks. But she had friends that also did it, right? And she met with them as well around that time. She doesn't live anywhere near us anymore, so that was like a very odd thing, that out of the ordinary thing that we met with her.
Right.
Because she was just so happened to be visiting the city at that time. And then obviously she didn't just meet with us, she met with her female friends that had OnlyFans accounts after meeting with us. So our speculation is that she found out how much money these girls are making, and they had much smaller audiences than she had.
Right.
So
Let's give ballpark a figure here. So we're talking about Instagram audiences first. So how many Instagram followers would she have had
at the time,
before she started?
before she started, probably 300K or more.
So 300,000. That's a huge following.
Yeah.
I mean, that's enormous. So these girls that were talking up OnlyFans to her were in the 100K range.
No, the girls that were that she met with were in the high 20s or so.
Okay, so really,
Really, like way, like 10 times smaller than her.
Okay.
But yeah, about that.
Do you have any rough figures about how successful this 300K girl was on Instagram? I mean, not on Instagram. Sorry, on OnlyFans.
No, not.
You wouldn't know.
No.
Okay. No, I'm just curious because the stats usually state somewhere that your average OnlyFans girl makes what, $150, $200 a month or something.
Like me and my friends, like I have a rough maybe thing, but because we made like a friggin' burner like account for it to go check what she's posting, right? Obviously,
yeah.
But the only thing we can gain from that is that like the girls will sometimes do like tip me like $100 and be like a VIP forever, where like you get because all the stuff is behind a paywall.
Yeah.
Right. But if you send the $100 the one time, the promise is that like everything after that will be free of charge. And then that thing, I think within like the first month was at like $10,000.
So she had earned $10,000 in a month through this particular sales strategy.
Yeah, and that was just the one route.
Right, the one way she monetized the OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really know how OnlyFans works behind the scenes because obviously I never created an account. When you guys created this spoof account of yours just to check her out, right? Does it show how many followers or something? No, it doesn't show any of that. Okay. All right. But clearly, and when you met with her after she had created the account, right? You didn't talk about this subject. How did you kind of measure her mental state comparatively to before? How did she change? Did she change?
She changed as a person. Maybe I wouldn't even say it was due to the OnlyFans, but due to the popularity on social media. Whereas like before,
what was the time gap, by the way, between those?
Last time I would have seen her before that would have been in 2019, and this was in 2023 that I saw.
4-year gap.
Yeah.
Okay. So in 4 years.
Yeah,
she's changed.
Basically, like in terms of personality, not so much, but like when me and my friend would meet with her and we spent a couple days together, like going out into Toronto and stuff. Always on our phone. Always on our phone. Like we would be eating somewhere. Like how you have to record the restaurant. Mm-hmm. You have to post it. You have to post what your meal is. She was very in the know about stuff. Like she doesn't live in Toronto, right?
Got it.
But she was very in the know about good restaurants and stuff because of her space on social media. She pays attention to where other people that are of her like similar following, like they're like, yeah, they have large audiences. She pays attention to where they eat, what they do, kind of like, and then she would recommend that to us. So we'd be in the car and me and my friend would be like, oh, like, where should we go eat? Like, what do you want to do? And she said, oh, well, this other person I saw was at here, here, and here. Mm-hmm. So we can go here, here, and here.
Right.
Right. And she was like, I remember some famous DJ guy was having a concert in Toronto at some pool bar. And then she happened to know about it. And then, yeah, we went to that as well. And the restaurants we all went to was based on like her recommendation as well.
Right. But like in terms of this, did she seem normal or did she get more unhinged, or like did something go to her head from what you remember? Because obviously what you're describing in terms of being on her phone and all that, yeah, I could kind of imagine, I mean, as an influencer, whatever job title, any sort of public personality, that requires the constant creation of content in order to keep attention on yourself. I can imagine you adopting that sort of entrepreneurial mindset where you're never not at work, right? So everything's orchestrated around your job. It just happens to be attention whoring, right? So you're constantly generating content because everything's an opportunity for content. I can kind of see that. But when you engaged with her as a person beyond that, did she seem like, yeah, there's some mental damage creeping in here?
Not that I would say identify as that per se, but maybe like an element of kind of like entitlement or a boosted ego, because just due to the fact that there's literally thousands of men that simp for her, essentially.
Yeah.
Right? And like there are guys she's had offers, she was telling us like pay for it, like just pay her money just to speak to them, like not even like the pictures or anything, just to like give them attention. Like she had sponsored shopping trips, sponsored flights and stuff from guys, essentially.
She ever go to Dubai?
No, not that I know of.
Probably wouldn't brag about that though. But if you didn't witness any overt mental damage, other than some of these entitlements.
But like I said, like I had 2 meetings with her, one right before she did started, and then one like a few months after she started doing this. And in that time, she seemed very similar, because it was a few months. There would have been like maybe like 7 months difference. But no, she seemed, the largest difference was the 4 years before. The 7 months didn't really change much. And when I said it didn't come up, the topic of OnlyFans, it was like the only way it did was that I had heard from my friend that someone, a girl that they all would have known, that also does OnlyFans. I had mentioned that like, oh, like, doesn't she, like, I heard that she has like an apartment here, like, what do you think she does? And she was like, oh, she does what I do. And it was at that.
So
and I was like,
she didn't conceal it. I guess she knew that you knew what she does.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, because obviously, like, if we had followed her, you can't not know.
Yeah, she would have advertised.
Yeah. So that was the only mention of it, was she does what I do.
Does she have a boyfriend?
No.
Okay, yeah. Because a lot of these OnlyFans girls have a boyfriend and they're concealing that guy.
One girl that from our high school, my friends had a theory that when she started doing OnlyFans, it was like a form of her boyfriend pimping her out, essentially. Because like they would, like, obviously through this spoof account, we checked out like everyone that we would have known from our area. And yeah, like, just when I saw the pictures and when like they were telling me about the pictures, they were like, yeah, like she looks like she doesn't want to be doing this, but like it's like her boyfriend is like behind the camera taking pictures of her and stuff for this.
Right, got it.
And she didn't have a large following, so it was like, didn't necessarily make sense for it either, but yeah, okay.
Okay, but there's a general nonchalantness that you're presenting here, like it's just a job. It's what I'm hearing you. The way this girl was.
Yeah, like it's like much less like taboo, I guess, now. Like it's not, like, obviously a lot of people talk shit about it. But it's like normal in a way as well.
So would you say that, encountering a girl like that, your contemporary Gen Z guy would he really blink at it? Would it really be that frowned upon?
Well, generally you wouldn't like pursue this as a girl that you want to date, right? So you kind of like automatically exclude, for a lot of guys, like the even possibility of dating that. But like there's a fair amount of guys that don't really care either. Right? So
I can imagine as such. In terms of the prevalence of it amongst the actual peer group, you said before that every friend of yours fundamentally knows somebody from their high school or somewhere that is doing something like this.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I don't know, like, statistically, what would you think? 10%, 20% of girls?
No, not that. I wouldn't.
Like that.
No, maybe like I'd put it low single digits, honestly, like
Okay.
friggin' 2%, maybe not even like 1%. But it's like one, like like from your high school, there's like a couple hundred girls, right?
Mhm.
And of them, there's like from my high school, I off the top of my head, I can say I know two, but I also didn't know every girl
Mhm.
or kept up with what they did afterwards.
Mhm.
From my grade, so out of like maybe we can say just over 200 girls,
Yeah.
that at least is two. So that's 1%. But I wouldn't be surprised if there was one or two more.
Right.
There's just I wouldn't know about it.
Right. And what about the impression of OnlyFans girls to the other girls that aren't doing it from your generation? How do they perceive that?
Um, a mixed bag, I would say. But like I haven't really spoken with girls necessarily about it in any sort of. A lot of it is kind of like you could say like girls are like, oh yeah, that's degenerate, and some would be like, yeah, like get that bag, sister, like,
Okay.
like take advantage of these guys, like do your thing, right? But I don't know. There's a mix, yeah. Like obviously, a lot of them would be like, no, like that's gross, and like you shouldn't do that,
Mm-hmm.
and would look down upon someone that does that. But it's almost like that's kind of like a taboo opinion to have because you're not supposed to like,
Criticize
yeah,
OnlyFans girls.
no,
Right?
you're not. It's like it's kind of like a misogynist take in a way.
Well, no, I
What you
understand. But the girls that would have been doing the criticizing, were they actually attractive themselves, or could it be wrapped around this, I don't know, concealed jealousy or something?
Um, maybe that's a part of it, but
You doubt it.
it could be. But I don't think that's the main motivation by any stretch of the imagination.
Right, right. And the girls that would have been doing the criticizing, you would say that they're the same girls who abstained from hookup culture. Right?
Yeah, generally,
Yeah.
but not even just that, because that's like definitely there would be more inclined, but there'd definitely be like a fair amount of girls that draw the line at like hooking up with a few guys over like their university experience, and that's just like a step too far. Like they might not like criticize it too much, but they would say like, no, like it's definitely not for me. Like I wouldn't, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And side question, though, I should have asked this earlier, but body count. What would you think is the average body count of what the guys in your uni or the girls in your uni, if you were to estimate? Like the ones that partook in hookup culture, obviously. Well, even based on your friends, you're already naming some numbers to me before, right? So,
Yeah, it's like it's there's a wide range. Like the highest that I would say is like maybe like the 20 mark.
uh-huh. For the 4 year period.
No, like count like when you say body count, I'm talking about like all time,
Oh, all time. Okay.
right? I don't yeah, around about that. And
For your
then
guy friends, right?
yeah,
Okay.
and then like maybe like 4 or 5, 3. Like some guys will be like like I know some of my friends would like not abstain from it, but like they're not like super
Active.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like it's not super easy to find either if you're not in that space like all the time. Like some of them, like if you don't go to university anymore, for example,
Yeah.
or like you never went to a traditional like university college thing that you would live on campus or like live in the city with like by yourself,
Yeah.
then it would be less frequent, right? But if you're put in that space where you're going to parties and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
then the numbers are higher generally.
Yeah, but for the girls that you would have known, you would have associated with, what would you estimate their body counts at? Like obviously they're
5 to 10.
5 to 10.
Yeah.
Okay, of in all time.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It could be higher, but no one's really bragging.
No, I understand.
Right.
But if it's treated somewhat casually by these girls, I mean, do you think they have a huge incentive to lie because they're participating anyways?
No, but you don't really like. Well, at least me, like I'm not gonna ask
Yeah.
necessarily unless I like am like interested in them and I've been talking to them for a while. That's not like a taboo question anymore.
Yeah.
It's like something like a potential boyfriend should know,
Yeah.
then it's like, yeah, but I would give the range as like, yeah, like 5 to 10.
Okay.
But it definitely is higher. Just I don't necessarily know girls that would be in that range.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah. Okay, well, back to the OnlyFans aspect of it. Is there anything else about that subject to cover, really? Anything from your experience?
Maybe not. It's just like a normal kind of thing now.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's it's somewhat frowned upon, but it's not like a scarlet letter that you're ostracized from the social world because of it.
No, you're not ostracized from the social world because of it.
Yeah.
Certain people might not want to associate with you so much anymore, but no one's gonna be like, no, I won't hang out with you ever because you did this.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. The amount of simps is fairly high as well. Surprisingly so, almost. But I would say a lot of them are older guys. Like guys from my age are probably not the driving force of this.
So the older guys that you'd be talking about, like these girls would be dating older guys, right?
If they've gone onto that path, that's generally the trend.
Right. So the guy, that was a question I don't think we talked about the answer to, is that the relationships you did witness in university, was it predominantly age matched, or were there age gaps? Were these girls dating much older men or older men in general, or were they just other universities?
If they're dating, like the difference would only be like a couple years generally.
Okay, so they're basically.
But there was basically age matched.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The next point you want to talk about there?
Can speak about how I think men maybe now are starting to get maybe more power in the dating space, at least for like younger guys. Like how I said, like based on my experience, guys kind of have choices, right? Like
How so?
Because like I said, like yes, there's lots of girls that are ready to have sex with you at any given time when you're in university and you're going out to different places and drinking and doing that kind of stuff. But it's like I said, like, is there a girl that's worthy?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's almost like the real like question there.
Right. So are girls getting like a good sense that guys are being more picky now? Are they starting to behave because they're seeing that men are rejecting them en masse, or like how do these guys get power? Because power suggests they have some exclusive authority over how the outcome comes about, right? Because simps generally just forego any power they may have, right? They accept whatever, right? So there's a lot of simping going on. So that's clearly not empowering to men as a unit, right? That's literally disempowering to men as a unit, because we're not controlling the dialogue there, because the behavior doesn't match, the consequences don't match the stated objections, right? So this power you're describing here, how does that play out?
Well, like I said, like you kind of exclude. I guess you kind of have to be a certain caliber of guy to be able to do this.
Yeah.
But if you are, generally you just exclude any girls that have high body counts that you know of, right? Like it's you will not look for anything of that nature.
Right. Well. I mean, the general manosphere would say that. Yeah, I guess the Chads always had that capacity because they had options, right? So that's nothing new, right? It's the guys that really didn't have those options. However, it's a question of since we've already discussed that you've witnessed enough, I guess, exemplars of like short men, fat guys that are dating, that are even cheating on the girls they're dating. They're selective as well, I would assume, right? Or are they taking what they can get and just not particularly concerning themselves with keeping what they get?
It's hard to say like what guys would be thinking in that scenario. maybe they take what they get. But I think that like even a guy like that, also like I said, like if you're like really bottom of the barrel, obviously generally I guess those guys are more prone to taking what they can get. But I think guys are more selective with who they choose to partner up with than they used to be, I guess is my point. That yeah, you just there's lots of guys, not maybe not even just the higher caliber guys.
Yeah.
Just yeah, like throw that thing out, like the
So guys generally reject choosing nothing over a whore.
yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. I think because like I said, like one of my friends that I told you earlier was looking for something serious.
Yeah.
He was he had some weight on him over this period, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, even he was like, yeah, like no, like none of these girls are for me.
Right, but that's a guy that you're saying gained some weight, but he never had trouble dating, right? He had girlfriends in the past.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, he's not a good example then to really say that he's. Yeah, I mean, he can be picky, but if he's never actually secured a girl, I wouldn't say he's much of a player in this game of consideration, right? Because clearly women aren't picking him either.
But if we're talking about, because we're talking about, there's a large gap between just sex and dating, right?
Okay. So, but that guy was getting laid.
Yeah, he was.
Okay. So he could pull women. Yeah.
No, I think he had maybe like I wouldn't know exactly, but for like it's not he wasn't a problem of like finding someone to sleep with. That wasn't the issue.
Okay, that's
the issue is finding a girl that you actually want to be in a relationship with. Okay. Right? And I've like the issue is not sex. The issue then becomes to find a girl that's actually what you would say is a good girl and that you could actually be seen like dating.
Right. Okay. No, that makes sense. Like because it's important. It's important to also qualify the caliber of men, meaning these men have to have options, right? Otherwise their opinion doesn't carry a lot of weight, right?
Yeah, but I think that guys generally do have options. Like even like I said, like the lower caliber guys, you could describe them as.
Because like, you never particularly, because that would be a highly controversial opinion, right, in this space. But you're not talking about anything to do with online dating.
Online dating would be like I said, like if these guys are cheating on their girls, right? A large percentage of the girls that they're finding to cheat on their current girlfriends with would be probably online.
Okay.
Like I know because I've talked to some guys and some of them were found like online. So this would be on like through the Tinder or some of those apps.
Okay, so you must hang around a lot of these Chad characters because the statistics for online dating against men are fairly skewed against them. Like there's a lot of men out there that receive nothing in terms of matches, much less the opportunity to actually pursue sex, right?
Yeah.
Right. So in the actual space itself, the physical space, right? The dynamic is different from the online space because the online space it's easy enough to swipe left on a person. Clearly, any guy will have better results in the real world simply because, well, physically the girl is just there to absorb more of the, I don't know, dog and pony show he's going to put on to try and pull her, right? So,
yeah, this might be kind of like specific, like more specific case in the general public because we were talking about university towns where like lots of these girls are just open to it and drunk and like whatever. They're not like, maybe it's not a guy that they would normally do anything with in terms of sex, but I mean, they're already at this party. Their friends have hooked up with some random guys and she's not going to be alone. And she might as well just fucking take this fat guy or whatever, right? I think that's something that happens and maybe that's part of the reason why some of the guys that we've been talking about are capable of cheating on their girlfriends. Right. But like,
well, that does contextualize it, and I can kind of see that how that would actually work.
If it's like I think it mostly is like this, more so in this space than if, for example, already like a few years out from school, you're not around this kind of environment
The
anymore.
scene, yeah.
I could definitely see how it would be different, right? But the scene
Yeah.
just gives so many opportunities to like to all sorts of people. I would say to do whatever.
How do you
Whatever
find
thing.
yourself in that scene? Like outside of attending university, but attending a university itself is not sufficient to find you in that scene. So how, as a student in university, do you find that scene and then become a participant of it? How does that work?
Well,
Is there reputations like you're
if
saying that frat house thing? It's like you just go there.
if there's you I mean, if you have friends, right? And your friends drag you into a lot of stuff, right? Even
Someone has to be inducted already into it to drag you into it.
if you
though.
have friends that know of stuff that, and it's not like the guys throwing the parties are like alpha male chads, like they're like a lot of them are like some random guys, like average guys, like just like
Well,
right?
I get it. This is all supported also by generally my hypothesis that it's predominantly shame that rules a lot of these girls, meaning that they go to where they can find a painkiller for that shame, which means that if there's guys creating a fun environment, which is a party, right? They will like those guys regardless of other qualities because the fun environment is a painkiller for these girls, right? So yeah, like exactly like what you're saying. It doesn't really matter how well they look like. You just have to act as aspirin to them, however way you achieve that, right? Which is fine, and then the same reason why these girls would actually go with these less attractive guys in those contexts, because it's really a painkiller. Ultimately, you're having fun, you're forgetting about your problems and all that shit. So you're fucking whoever because he just happens to be nearby, right?
No, there definitely is a fair amount of that, right?
Right, but somebody coming in to university, right? You're moving, say, across, I don't know, across 3-4 towns. So you're 400 kilometers away. You don't know anybody, right? You just start your first year, first semester. How would you find yourself there?
Okay, well, typically what would happen, and this is not what happened with me because like I said, I only went for a year and a half. But typically what would happen is that, well, you live on campus in the dorms the first year.
Yeah.
And I guess it's highly dependent on who you're paired with on your floor, who your roommates are,
Yeah.
right? Also, what your attitude is towards the whole thing. You have to be kind of
Open to it.
yeah.
And you have to drink, I would assume. Right? So you have to kind of be part of the drinking drug culture or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and then it's just like there'd be parties on your floor and stuff in the
Right.
dorms. Every year there's a few street parties at every university. People even tour different universities on different weekends because they know that like there's homecoming parties.
Yeah.
That's just like massive street parties with thousands of kids on the street drinking in public.
Yeah.
And there's St. Patrick's Day is known for that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to be invited to this even. You could just go. Like if you have like one friend, you could just go and start doing whatever you want to do.
Yeah, like because there was no real hookup culture in the same sense as it exists today back when I was in university, but there definitely was party culture, right? So partying is not new, right? And the way it functioned, because I was one of those examples of somebody who moved 400 kilometers to university, knowing nobody when I landed. I lived in a dorm, and the dorm was the building I was in had 10 floors. Each floor was because it was a cube, basically. The structure itself was a cube. It had 4 walls, obviously, each floor, and 2 of the walls were devoted towards men, each sharing a room with another person, with another guy. So there was like 6 or 8 rooms of guys, and the other 2 walls were all women. So there were always mixed sex floors, but same sex rooms. So you had a mixture of those two. So people would meet the opposite sex inside, for example, the common room on every floor. And across floors, there were common rooms, so you could meet them there. Now, obviously, the guys that were paired off to live with each other, they weren't paired off based on anything other than program, meaning that if you were in comp sci like I was, then the guy you're with is probably in comp sci, right? It wasn't always the case, but it was the majority of the case that people were paired off this way. So our floor was guys from computer science, girls from nursing. That's how our floor was structured, right? So clearly you're going to interact with nursing girls, right? By default, because they live literally down the hall from you. So there were invites that you can get pulled through those girls, right? They'd come home drunk sometimes, so there was opportunity to fraternize with them. Some of the guys you were engaging with even on your floor were more of the Chad-like creature that somehow found themselves pulled into those opportunities, well, because of just looks, right? So he would invite some or make aware of the other guys on the floor of where parties were and things like that. And then you could, through association, attend that sort of stuff. So once you started attending it, you would meet more people of that culture, and then word would spread in terms of word would spread. You'd become familiar. People would become familiar with you in that culture, and so you would get invited. But you would only really get invited if the places you found yourself initially, you were fun at. So you still had to have a personality that was pleasant and entertaining because, oh man, that's a cool fucking guy because, he got really shit-faced and fell into the pool, right? So you had to do something stupid, right? You had to participate. You had to almost prove to them you were one of the retards in a way. Because a lot of it was kind of retarded. Like the behavior there was kind of retarded no matter how you look at it. It was fun, but it was retarded. So if you could stand to behave in that manner, you would prove to them you're like one of them, and then you had opportunities to continue participating in that. But one requirement, it was implicit, but it was a requirement, is you had to drink.
Yeah.
You didn't have to do drugs, but you had to drink. I mean, nobody wanted a sober person at their party.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Yeah, that was it was offensive almost. Yeah. So I don't know, has this model that I'm describing here been updated in any way?
Well, I can tell you one of my experiences because for some context, I started university in Poland actually, and then I transferred after the first year. So, but before I started my university in Poland, because I started a month after Canadian university start, I visited one of my friends at his university and stayed with him in his dorm room. And this was during the first month of university. So this would have been right around after the time of they have all those integration like Frosh Week events. So he already had known a group from his floor. They're all sort of like in the sciences, those students. And so they had classes and stuff together. They knew each other. And then I was just visiting for the night. And yeah, we were drinking. We went out to some frat party that we didn't actually end up staying long. And then, yeah, but it was like so easy once you already knew someone and you were of the type that you're not against doing this. There's no lack of opportunity per se in that environment. You just have to know someone and I guess be somewhat open to it and not like...
Well, you got to be one of them. You got to behave like one of them.
You have to drink for sure.
Yes.
And then, yeah, you have to behave of the type.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, it's natural. I mean, people want to associate with those of their ilk because if you're behaving in that way, that implies you're not judging their behavior. And, I mean, the retardation that we got up to in university was pretty extreme in some cases, so I'm not denying that that's an unnecessary component. So people of a disposition that isn't so prone to actually getting enjoyment out of doing stupid stuff, right? Like we at one point in time, I remember we broke into the school cafeteria and stole all the utensils, right? They had this mobile garbage can, right? We wheeled out a bunch of plates, cutlery and shit. I mean, just for fun, right? I remember me and my buddy Ed, when we did that, we were even thinking in the moment, I'm like, this shit will get us expelled. Like, we are really retarded, but we're still doing it, right? But we're still doing it, right? So if you're kind of like that, I think you'll find yourself in that scene eventually, sooner or later, because you get up to things, you share stories, and you will identify somebody to kind of rope you into it. Um, yeah, but I guess that's really the prerequisite, isn't it? Like you got to kind of be retarded, or at least tolerate it. And
Yeah, you have to tolerate it for sure.
yeah,
You have to not judge the people who are doing it.
yeah,
And then, yeah, it's if you're looking for that, it's definitely no shortage of opportunity. If you do, like I said, like find yourself on campus in your first year, for example, and then typically you find friends on that floor, and then you live together the next year somewhere in a house off campus,
yeah.
and then it continues. Maybe you have parties at your house. Maybe you live in a student neighborhood, and then you go to other people's parties on the street. And then definitely during the large street parties, everyone of this nature is going out
Yeah.
onto the street, and it's just kind of mayhem there. You can anything goes.
Yeah. No.
It's like who can be the most stupid is like yeah. It's like
No, a question about the retardation, because memories are flooding back to me now of some of my history about it. But in my time, you didn't have to fear that anyone was going to record you and put it on the internet. Is there any ambient fear, and was there any ambient fear, like somebody with a cell phone, that they're going to capture you being retarded and then throw it on somewhere?
well, the things that you're doing are generally kind of almost expected of you in that space, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, there's a really big Instagram account called Canadian Party Life that posts videos of exactly this, like all the stupid stuff that people do at parties. Yeah. But it's like an honor thing if you're featured there. It's like you want to be featured there.
Right.
Right? Like,
so nobody believes that there's any further down the line social
nobody thinks about anything social consequences of this if you're already kind of in that space. If you're outside of it and you already think this is degeneracy, then I could see how you would think that this is not a good thing to be featured on accounts like this. Yeah. But it's like a badge of honor for the people that are in this space and participate in it.
And from your experience, has anyone actually experienced negative social consequences downstream from being featured on something like this? Nobody.
No.
So there really is no real downside as far as you can see.
Because the people that are in the videos generally aren't tagged. Right. And there's enough people that look like you that you could have plausible deniability in any sort of case that would matter. And I don't think any whatever future employer, if we're talking about down the road consequences, is going to scan through like this page unless it's like they recognize you already from it. Yeah. There's no real way that you can be found. And it's like, even if you are, you can just say that's not me. Yeah. And it's like, no one, there's no real consequences to it, I don't think. Okay. Generally.
Well, no. I mean, it's important that, like, in the sense of saying that if you've known anybody to experience it, that's like some sort of proof that there can be. Not knowing anybody is at least validating that perhaps not, or at least not yet. Right, though it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a universal aspect to it. But what you're saying is very true, is that you do have some plausible deniability because you kind of start to look different as you age anyway. So even if you're retarded in university, sure, the internet's forever, but you don't look the same forever, right? You age, you change hair, you have different clothing, right?
The thing I can think about that would make you face consequences is if something that you did in the recording is like highly illegal, and then that's found, and then obviously that can be used as evidence against you in that case. But the things, they generally are probably like, number one, you're drinking in the street you're not supposed to be, or like lots of the stuff that's posted is like people climbing on places or vandalizing stuff. Like generally vandalism and drunken behavior in the street and stupid stuff like that is what is posted on these sorts of accounts. But this is like no one's like gonna hunt you down for this. Really. Got it.
After
the fact.
And considering that these larger public accounts do exist, the guys that you're saying that are now, because the original point that we started with is that guys are like asserting their own desires more their standards. They're asserting their standards for women more. Do any of these guys, or that you're aware of from Gen Z, do they actually scout the internet looking for evidence against the girl they're considering dating?
Well, a super easy thing a guy could do, yeah, no, for sure that could be part of like a screening process is like on Instagram there's features like tagged, like the person's tagged. You can look at what photos they're tagged in or videos that they're tagged in.
Yeah.
And if you see them like with like friggin' like 10 random guys that you don't know about around them, you can be like, some red flags are going off there.
But isn't it easy enough for a woman to untag herself from
It
photos?
is, right? But if she doesn't even go to the effort to do that, then like it's like even more red flags.
Right. Well, so I mean, the screening process doesn't seem particularly advanced.
No, it's not, but it's like it's what you have at your disposal.
Sounds like a lazy screening process.
Yeah, I mean, because you can't like, you're not the FBI. You can't like go deep into her past if you don't really if you don't really know her, and even if you spoke to her friends, for example, it's not like they're gonna like rat her out to you in any sort of way.
Well, unless it's revenge or jealousy or something, yeah.
But no, you just have to kind of trust her, right? And then if you, I mean, obviously observe what her behavior is like, and then take it from there.
But obviously that initial, at least, even though it's kind of a lazy filter, but that initial filter does exist, right? Like it's like the default thing. You check your social.
I mean, how she presents herself on her account, the main one, like the first thing you would see.
Yeah.
And then you can go a little deeper into her tagged photos and see like where she's been, like what she's been associated with in the past. Like, and then that's just like the super basic, like.
Do guys do anything more advanced in terms of this filtering in the online spaces? Any tools that they use?
Not that I know about. Honestly, no, not that I know about.
Because that would be actually an interesting product to have a website where you can, I don't know, feed it a picture of a girl or something and have it go scan the whole internet to see what it comes back with.
Yeah, nothing that I've come into contact with that I know about.
Okay, well, but at least there's that initial filter. There's a third point you want to raise as well. Yeah.
Let me see here.
So we talked about the OnlyFans. We talked about this more pickiness of guys. You described it as gaining a bit more power. I'd call it more, I guess, asserting their standards a little bit stronger than maybe in the past.
Yeah, maybe a general reluctance to date is more prevalent today than, obviously I wasn't like in the space in the 90s or so I can't compare necessarily, but I would say there is a general reluctance to date among a large proportion of the population, whether that be caused by the proliferation of like hoeing around, and guys don't want that, so they would rather put off being in a relationship if that means that they won't be with a hoe. Right. Lots of guys are like that, and
by date, this is important. That means, because in your jargon, that means as a couple, to become a couple, right? Because the talking phase thing is what we used to call dating, I guess, back in the 90s. Like how I would kind of describe in this subject, the historical element for my generation was that it was assumed you were going to have like a relationship, and that meant wife, and that usually meant kids and like a house and all that. It was assumed in the sense of everybody behaved and acted out reality as if that was going to happen sooner or later. So when it wasn't happening in some sort of expected time frame, people were looking at you weird. It's like, well, why isn't it there, right? That's what you do, right? That's just how life is. That's what you do, right? Has that generally been removed, like from your generation? Is there this consideration now that having like a wife, kids, or even a girlfriend is more of a optional nice to have, or not even necessarily nice to have, but like an optional way of life?
It's like, I think it's seen as more of a commitment. It's kind of like a bigger thing, maybe. Like you said, like it was presumed that you date when you're in this talking stage. So just the fact that you've become a couple is like a big deal in that.
In your generation.
Yeah, it's like,
Like, does it have like this? Because to us, not really, right? Becoming a couple was a meaningful step, but it's not marriage, right?
yeah.
So dating itself, it felt like people were far more open to actually enter a courtship process, which didn't necessarily mean that there any serious decision was made, if you know what I mean.
Well, I think that the talking stage is like a sort of filter for that. And then once you decide that, yeah, like this person is someone that I would want to be with, it becomes something serious.
Right, but
at that
I'm
point.
talking about the psychological leap here, right? Because for me, getting a girlfriend was almost like it entailed nothing about wifing her up. It entailed no lifelong commitment. All it meant is I had a girlfriend, meaning that I guess steady sex or something like that, right? There was a status element to it associated with it, where maybe it kept your parents off your back, kept your friends off your back when your other buddies were pairing off and things like that. You could then participate in couple-related activities, right? But there was no assumption a girlfriend turns into a wife. Right, you're expected to have a wife. People would expect that eventually you marry a girlfriend you have, but there was no statement saying the girlfriend you have right now you're gonna marry.
I don't think that's necessarily changed all that much, but I think it might be taken a little more seriously just due to the fact that, like, if there's a general reluctance to date now, more so than there was prior, then just the fact that you've achieved that first step is like a large, like already a lot has been filtered up to this point.
Right.
Whereas, like, if you're already at this point, chances are you have something decently good.
So, because what it sounds like to me, Adrian, is almost like the concept of marriage has now shifted into relationship. Like the weight that people used to associate with marriage has now fallen into relationship.
I would agree with that. No, not fully, but there's obviously like I would say there's something to that statement. There's something behind that statement, that an element of truth to that.
Right, where we're now being considered a couple carries far more weight today than it did in the past, right? Because are people expecting marriage, or is that just like some make-believe thing?
It's like not even like I want to say like MGTOW quote unquote ideas.
Yeah.
I would say maybe even becoming more mainstream, right?
Yeah.
In terms of that, marriage is not seen as necessary to a lot of people. It's like being together as a couple is good enough, and like, okay, we live together, but we're not formally married. Like lots of people have kids and raise families even like this. Maybe not, it's not like a super large proportion of the population, but I think it's higher now than it was earlier.
Right. So would you say then if the elevation of talking stage to couple, as in the change of status from single to couple, has now acquired more weight, that the filtering process is more intense now?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
That does kind of make
you
sense.
could almost like phrase it as a metaphor, like not perfect obviously, but today's talking stage was yesterday's dating, and today's marriage is
yesterday's coupledom.
Yeah.
So it's almost so it's almost like there's a whole gap in between there. Like there's an element that's completely gone. Because we would have said, if we say the progression historically would have been dating, then being a couple, there was also then the engagement, which was also an elevation of being a couple, which was higher than just being a couple, but being engaged was already a step up. And then you were married, right? So now it seems like there's the talking stage and relationship and coupledom. And that's almost like all that's assumed, right?
Yeah.
Where marriage is like, I don't know, where would that hold? Where would that standing of marriage actually be in the minds of Gen Z? Like it's like a fantasy that's old school stuff?
I would say there's still very large range of opinion on this, and it's highly dependent on who you are and who your partner is. because there definitely is still a large desire for marriage, but I think men in general have sort of rethunk the whole things to a certain degree where they realize the danger that they put themselves in through signing this marriage document.
Right, but is that like actually like amongst your peers, right? Because amongst the MGTOW group and the red pill space in general online, yeah, I can say that's universal truth. But amongst your peers, is that something that has just evolved?
I wouldn't go so far as to say that marriage is something that's off the table, like in the space you're describing, like the MGTOW space. But there is definitely a proliferance of the mindset that, yeah, like my future wife, like prenup, like for sure. Like,
so there's a aversion to marriage for sure, right? It's an option, but it's very hesitant.
It's more hesitant, maybe not very hesitant, but like, it's like if it were to happen, I think in my friend group, lots of guys are like, yeah, like prenup is like a no-brainer. Like obviously, like like there's I can't expose myself to that kind of danger.
Right. Okay. And that's not consequent of them encountering red pill information from the manosphere. That's just you grew up with that somehow, right?
Yeah, I don't think any of my friends would have encountered MGTOW or MGTOW YouTube channels
or anything from the manosphere, right? None of the PUA content or.
Well, PUA content, when you say that what you've described to me seems like kind of generic, like pickup videos on YouTube of like guys going up to girls and saying pickup lines and stuff. Or am I in a different?
Well, it's part of that space. I think PUA at one point in time was parodied a bit by that.
What they would have seen as the parodied stuff.
Right, but do these guys follow any? Is game a thing? Is that word even used?
Like a little bit, but
you don't have people taking courses, reading books.
No.
Okay.
Not that I know of. No one would brag about it if they did. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, so that'd be like an article of shame.
Yeah.
Right, because there was an element in the 90s, 90s, 2000s, early 2000s, I guess would have been more relevant for me about that stuff where I guess we can't say necessarily there was a status oriented in the mind's eye of the general public, but I think amongst PUAs, you kind of sought out other PUAs because you'd go on these joint missions called sarging. There's a whole jargon associated with it where you're intentionally going out to hit on women, right? To practice game, right? So that's not something that you guys do. You don't orchestrate this activity.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you go out and stuff with your friends, like obviously, like.
Right. No. I mean, the original intent behind this discussion was just to ground it whether or not this aversion to marriage emerged out of the red pill stuff that I would have been engaged in.
I don't think so. What I would say probably point more towards is examples of rich guys getting fucked over by divorces.
Right.
And that's sticking in the minds of like guys from all over. Like just like what was the stat? Like the top 10 richest women in the world are all only there because of what their husbands did. Right. Because of divorce.
Right.
So I think that's just like in the back of men's minds nowadays, and so like they might not be rich, but I mean certainly like lots of guys are trying to become rich. If they see themselves as being in danger by something like this, then
and that sort of news, where would you have encountered it? Like would it have been on YouTube or in actual media articles or other social media platforms? What form would that?
The news of like a rich person getting divorced. Places like Instagram, Twitter, you would see like or Snapchat. There's like certain like explore channels that have like stuff, random like stuff that talk like the magazines almost that you see at the store checkout line is like the Snapchat like explore function kind of thing where they have like bullshit like like Kim Kardashian ate this today, but lots of the stuff would also be like. Yeah, like Jeff Bezos lost $80 billion of his net worth due to his divorce. Okay. And then that stuff would be posted on Instagram as well, like on certain pages that people would follow on YouTube. I'm sure YouTube, different people talk about it on YouTube as well that guys would listen to.
All right. So to me, it sounds like you're encountering this sort of information from pop culture, right? Because if you're talking about a magazine stand, right, in the physical world, that's pop culture, right? Yeah. That's definitely not the internet culture of the red pill or the manosphere, right? Yeah. Okay. So also filtered through social media of articles of pop culture. Yeah, that makes sense then. I mean,
It
like,
makes the news when there's a big famous rich guy getting divorced, and then people see how much he gets screwed over by it, and then it sticks in people's minds. I would say
okay.
is a big factor of it.
Yeah. So women creating MGTOW men
Yeah.
envy.
Also, like a lot of guys follow sports really passionately, and there's been cases, high profile cases of guys falsely getting accused of rape
Yeah.
and then pretty much ruining their careers and stuff. And these are high profile cases. Guys take this and they remember it, and they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, like playing this game is sometimes not safe with women. Like, depend on what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I understand. Okay. That's fascinating stuff. All right. So the conclusion I'm drawing from all of this is that the awareness of the dangers of women keep spreading just by doing what women do, and that it's even saturated pop culture enough to inform men who have no connection at all to red pill content through the channels we would normally disseminate this material, to actually start in a way becoming MGTOW, red pill, or some variation of that space just by existing in modern society, which is hilarious.
Yeah, and I think that has an influence as well on why maybe guys have a certain sort of higher, like,
Filtering mechanism.
yeah, right, and like a certain, maybe they have more power because they're more selective, and lots because guys are, I think, are probably more selective, generally. Obviously, like we were talking about earlier, how if you can't get any girls, and you take what you can get.
Yeah.
But I think a generalization that I don't think would be unfair is that guys are more selective with who they choose to date and then eventually marry, if they're even looking for that.
Right. Well, I can kind of appreciate that, because if you're saying that now being in a relationship is becoming a couple now carries like a more significant weight to that term, then I can kind of see how the selection process of actually girlfriending somebody up is closer to an engagement than in my world than it would be just having a girlfriend, which didn't really mean much of anything actually in my time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it has based on what you're describing as well, I'd say it has a higher status
Okay.
in young people's minds today.
I think we should close this discussion on this, because I mean I've learned a lot here that even we didn't get through our chats over the last few weeks where we've talked about these subjects. So yeah, so thank you, Adrian. This was a very interesting conversation. I wonder how long this went, 2 hours or something like that. Gonna edit this down a little bit, put it online, and we'll see how the people react, and maybe we'll have you back again on another discussion sometime in the future. So yeah, thanks a lot.
Cheers, MGTOW folks. Goodbye.
Okay.